It's a time when being LGBTQ plus is largely illegal, and there are few places individuals like you can openly socialize. In the club you occasionally visit to be around others like yourself, there are frequent police raids and arrests for high crimes against humanity like same sex dancing or not wearing gender appropriate clothing. The bar you are meeting in has no liquor license because it cannot obtain one, meaning the police, who are openly hostile to people like yourself, almost have carte blanche warrant to raid the establishment. And they are openly hostile to people who don't conform to their idea of morality. Several anti-LGBTQ, anti-cross-dressing, and legal discrimination in the employment area laws are on the books to legitimately target and harass transgender, drag queen, or same-sex oriented individuals. What you are categorized as is a mental disorder. Forced psychiatric treatment is common without an individual's consent, ranging from conversion therapy to forced lobotomies. Businesses are able to deny service to individuals like yourself with no real protections. Many of you are ostracized by friends or disowned by family.
Even without the legal ramifications, you face widespread social stigma and marginalization, negative stereotypes and false accusations of cultural corruption, the destruction of the country, and worst of all, indoctrinating and targeting children because you want to recruit them, and that what you are is contagious somehow. So even with the threat of arrest hanging over your head, you are there in that club, nursing a watered down drink, almost ready to get back out on the dance floor in the early morning hours of June 28th, 1969.
But doesn't it really sound like 2024 and the not too distant dystopian future of the supreme majority Republican corrupted state of Florida, or any of the other red states that have decided to wage war lately on the LGBTQIA plus community?
In this case, you are a gay, lesbian, or cross-dressing / transgender or drag queen individual at the Stonewall Inn in the Greenwich Village neighborhood of New York City, as another police raid is underway. Up until now, they have been met by people fleeing if they could, and usually being arrested and charged for violation of one of the moral laws listed above. But tonight is different. Tonight our show is different. Welcome to a very special Living Out Loud Live. I'm Vicki, newly remodeled middle-aged transgender woman, lesbian wife of my gorgeous wife Lisa, stepmom of two amazing men, and a woke rainbow mafia liberal feminist with only one true agenda: to end hate and spread love and light. I'm also a student of history with nothing but respect for the LGBTQIA plus individuals who faced overwhelming discrimination to light the path for us. With me, as always, are my two amazing sisters. Both are strong ally activists in their own right. They are my closest family and dearest friends. I will introduce the exceptionally strong and beyond belief well-known fierce as hell LGBTQIA plus activist, creator of the Living Out Loud with Laura audio podcast, mother of two LGBTQIA plus daughters that came out in adulthood, reformed corporate Barbie who struggles daily with chronic illness, and yet is here as a proud rainbow warrior. How are you tonight, Laura?
I am doing okay this evening. This show is a heavy one, but it's one that we really need to talk about. So I'm not nearly as chipper as I normally am on the show. However, I do have the honor of introducing our sister Jaime, who is on the front lines of the fight, not only for transgender children's rights, but social justice. She is the founder of Moms for Hope, an organization to help parents of transgender children. She is a history teacher, making the difference in the lives of children every day for the next generation to come. She is our resident historian and also the mom of two teenage boys and one twin girls. And again, with everything she has going on, she still manages to join us here at the table each week to change the world. Welcome, Jaime.
Hi. I'm so glad to be with you again. To reiterate what you said, Laura, this is a heavy topic, but I'm glad we are tackling it. I think it's an important one, and I'm just really excited to be here.
I'm stumbling over words because the they're so important, and I'm putting too much weight on them. So forgive me. I'm going to get my brain in check. Altogether, we are queens of the overshare because those who came before us gave us that right. Welcome to all of you joining us live or in replay. This is an opinion show. All of the opinions are our own. So you may hear some stuff that you don't agree with. You can join the discourse in the comments, but we just block people who try to troll us. We are explicit often, so parents, please monitor what your kids are viewing. We do have some words that some of us are going to have to say that are very uncomfortable, but they are related to the time and telling the history of what's going on. And tonight we have a ton to cover, so forgive me if it takes us a while. Because this isn't a show. This is what happens when three sisters who are activist accomplices decide to change the world together by looking back at where we have been. All right?
All right.
Cool. I think tonight we should jump right into it. Yes?
Yes.
Drinks up, ladies. This is going to be...
I even have a liquor drink this evening because this is such a difficult topic. So I got a seltzer with me this evening.
We have to journey back to a very different type of LGBT America. In 1969, LGBT people, activities, and everything related were illegal in 49 out of 50 states. But despite heavy penalties and unrelenting persecution, gay people still exist. They still gathered, they still had sex, and they lived in a strange underground.
Homosexuality was considered a mental defect, perhaps even psychopathy. Psychopathy. Electric shock aversion therapy to pornographic images was common. Sexual psychopaths is what many like me would be labeled, even if the sexual aspect of what we were played little into our life. We were frequently subjected to sterilization and castration. In several institutions, a chemical was used that simulated the feeling of drowning, so basically a chemical waterboarding torture. Even lobotomies were performed, so many of us ended up as catatonic vegetables.
And now I'm going to share some words that were often heard. Now, I want to say it gives me great pains to say these words. These are not my chosen words, but here is some of the language for you as an example. Faggot, sissy, queer, or homo were the common slurs. It was next to impossible to get a job or in mixed society at all if you were outed, which would happen regularly after arrest in the New York City newspapers. You couldn't hold a medical or legal license. No government or school would allow you to keep a job if you had one.
There was an anti-masquerading statute designed to harass and criminalize drag queens and cross-dressers. Being unpassable often meant arrest. Those in dress were subject to strip searches or being felt up by officers to confirm their actual gender.
The idea of out, as it stands now, did not even exist. Homosexuals were not treated as people, but more like things. Violent attacks were common. Entrapment was common. As many as 500 people were arrested for what were called crimes against nature, and up to 5,000 people were busted for solicitation each year. This is a time when Black rights and gay rights were under attack simultaneously. The Stonewall Inn was the happening center for what were called street kids, a mostly homeless LGBTQ community of young people who congregated in the Village area of New York City. Stonewall was adjacent within walking distance. It was where they danced and where they escaped the streets for just a little while.
It was also run by the mob, with booze that fell off a truck and without any kind of liquor license. So raids happened a lot, even when the mafia managed to pay off the New York City police to make those raids occur, mostly during weeknights and in the early evening of weeknights, when as few patrons were in the bar as possible.
They happened so frequently, people in the LGBT community knew the score. Lights came on and everyone was told to have their IDs in hand as they exited so they could be essentially booked if possible. They carried fake IDs and the police knew they were carrying fake IDs. There was little resistance ever. Those who were called almost always complied. Many reached for and held their license in hand as soon as the lights came on.
Slow dancing was the big attraction, while straight people had hotels, lovers' lanes, and other places to be sexual. Gay people had mafia run pitch black trucks that parked in the worst spots in the city and packed people in like sardines for dirty anonymous sex if they couldn't find it anywhere else.
Accusations were made that sex was happening in the streets in front of children. Homosexuality and cross-dressing were infectious and could spread. Wow, false claims of indoctrination, 1969 style. To put it simply, the rule in the LGBT community was whenever you saw cops, you ran.
But in the middle of all this discrimination, gay rights organizations started to rise publicly, advocating that homosexuality was not the evil it was portrayed to be. The Mattachine Society, which was one of the first and directly through negation within the mayor of New York City, stopped the police entrapment-style arrests in the city. Public, peaceful LGBT protests began in safer cities like Philadelphia. The problem was, however, that these early public societies were watered down and focused on some sort of awkward integration into middle-class society, often publicly proclaiming that gay people would never want things like the right to marry or adopt children.
This was the summer of love. However, and many of the LGBT community were already much more radicalized, already accustomed to living outside of the normal American dream. They just wanted to tear down the traditional patriarchal structures. It also helped that there were so many social movements and things to protest. Perfect storm, place, and time for activism.
But June of 1969, the year and month I was born, by the way, brought terrifying changes. The crackdowns escalated because it was an election year, and the mayor wanted to get reelected. The sex trucks and bars were all getting raided more frequently, and violence against gay people increased exponentially. People were getting strangled, shot, beaten to death, thrown from bridges into the river, blackmailed when they were outed, and losing jobs more than ever before. A good chunk of the population was in favor of it. Sound familiar? On June 29th, a full bright moon was hanging in the night sky.
And as we mentioned, up until this point, most raids were early and on a weeknight because of the mob's payoffs. Tonight, the police are looking for a big haul of arrests, going to raid the Stonewall Inn much later in the night, late Friday, early Saturday night, actually.
Only 6 police went in to conduct the raid, confident that the 6th precinct was nearby for backup. When the lights came on, focused on a much larger late night crowd that didn't want to stop dancing. For a change, they resisted. The commotion attracted others from a nearby village area. More and more started actively resisting arrest. One tougher lesbian was fighting to get free, and the cops started beating on her. This enraged the growing mob who were witnessing it.
Reinforcements for police did start arriving, but that just attracted more people from the village who mentally were filling to their breaking point and with discrimination, vilification, alienation, and outward efforts of eradication. Sorry, that's a lot of Asians. Sorry.
Yes. People started chanting pigs over and over and throwing pennies at the officers. The crowds surged quickly and at a constant pace. The initial small group of cops that conducted the raid took refuge in the club and held the LGBTQ people who were still inside semi-hostage. Soon fires were breaking out outside. Well-known drag queens started battering down the door to get in and attack the officers barricaded inside. Queens like
Marsha P. Johnson, and I know her born name is here, but I'm not going to read it out of respect because she should only be known as Marsha P. Johnson, as she was, faced hate and discrimination due to her gender identity and expression, which she did from a young age. She truly was a Black transgender woman who often expressed herself through drag performances. Please let that truth sink in for a moment. She was not a gay man in a dress, she herself identified as a transgender woman, for those who try to debate it. She was a resident of the 1960s Greenwich Village neighborhood and was frequently found in or around the Stonewall Inn. She is often credited with being one of the first to throw objects at the police outside the riot. While some authors and advocates label Stonewall events as the Stonewall Uprising or the Stonewall Rebellion, I firmly prefer to use the term Stonewall Riots. Webster's dictionary defines a riot as a violent public disorder, a description that aptly encapsulates Stonewall. Conversely, an uprising is typically a localized act of violence against an established government, and a rebellion, a popular alternative to riot, signifies open defiance against authority, control, or tradition. Rebellions, often sparked by spontaneous acts of violence, disrupt the established order, paving the way for potential revolution. Labeling the Stonewall riots as a rebellion perpetuates an inaccurate historical narrative that Stonewall was a turning point. In reality, the riots didn't change everything. It was the subsequent actions that were inspired by the riots, the rebellion, that was truly transformative.
Her stunning legacy as a trailblazing activist and LGBT advocate continues to frame and inspire the LGBTQIA plus movement today. Tragically, her life ended in Are we still talking about Miss May, or did I lose something here? Okay. Tragically, her life ended in July of 1992. While it was ruled a suicide, her close friends, unconvinced, have managed to get the investigation reopened. It remains unsolved.
There was another transgender drag queen named Sylvia Rivera, a New York City native. She was homeless after being kicked out by her parents at a young age. Being a combination of Puerto Rican and Venezuelan, she was described as small and fiery. She was involved in LGBTQIA plus activism from a young age, and she was with Marsha P. Johnson as one of the violent protesters in the riot. After Stonewall, she and Marsha co-founded the Street Transvestite Action Revolutionaries, or STAR, which provided support, food, shelter, and other legal help to transgender and homeless people. Wow, really threatening. Her work helped shine a light on the challenges faced by impoverished transgender people. She didn't stop until her death in 2002 at the age of 50.
And Randy Wicker, a prominent 1960s gay rights activist and Marsha's roommate until her death in 1992, organized protests and demonstrations after Stonewall and recounted a visit to DC's Congressional Cemetery bearing 2 purple roses for a tribute to fallen transgender heroes. Quote, "This rose is for Marsha," he said, holding up the larger one. "It's a bigger flower for a bigger heart. And this one is for Sylvia," he said of the smaller flower. "She was harder and stronger in a way and lasted longer. Actually, Sylvia did more, but she didn't win people's hearts the way that Marsha did."
Miss Major Griffin Gracie was another pioneering transgender activist. She identified as a woman at an early age and faced hatred and discrimination because of her gender identity expression. Though not a drag queen, she was already an activist in the village trying to help transgender women of color. She was in the fight at the Stonewall Inn, just like her compatriots Marsha and Sylvia. She also had a brilliant life dedicated to change, trying to address issues like homelessness, healthcare access, and violence against transgender individuals. Having been incarcerated herself at the riot, she also worked to provide support and help to those who were incarcerated or released from prison. She is still out on the road urging transgender people to fight for their rights and advocating in the White House. We met her at a rally in March for Transgender Youth Rights last October.
And I'm going to add a couple things that I didn't put in that I'm speaking from the heart about. One, at that rally, watching Dempsey watch and listen to what she said with reverence was truly inspiring. And two, it should be noted that she was put in a men's prison. like many of us will be if we are incarcerated. She was not treated fairly. She was not treated as she is for her gender identity, and she did hard time. So that really directed her effort to help support those that were incarcerated and released from prison. And as Jaime and Laura know, I am seldom at a loss for talking to people, even celebrities. Working for the company that I did, it was something that happened all the time. But literally all I could say was thank you. I couldn't even bring myself to take a picture with her, but she inspired this episode and the research that went into it greatly.
Which is true, and we should get back to that night itself. Several thousand were now gathered outside, thrilled that the cops were losing, ready to strike back if provoked. Some of the small group of cops drew their guns. The officer in charge knew one shot would have been a prelude to a massacre. He threatened the men under his command that the first person who fired before he did would end up on the worst walking patrol in the worst area forever. The growing LGBT protesters had no restraint to keep their rage from growing. 5 buses of riot police arrived as backup, but the crowd continued to push them back, resisting every arrest and even managing to free people already loaded onto the riot buses.
Yeah, they were really emboldened. The way some of the people were broken off some of those buses that were already arrested when they tried to shove one of the major protesters on the bus. He put his legs on either side of the doorway and shoved as hard as he could, knocking the police that were trying to push him on board backwards. The LGBTQ community became something it had never been before, a strong and present threat. Bricks were thrown, tires were thrown, bottles were thrown. Anything that could cause damage was used to cause damage. The cops were utterly defeated. The following day, so many segmented groups recognized the LGBTQIA plus community needed to come together as a whole. Many rose up to take the movement forward, but a few were. Stormy de la Verre, sorry, hard to pronounce that one, is often called the Rosa Parks of the LGBTQIA plus community. She was a biracial lesbian drag king who was present during the Stonewall uprising. You know that tough lesbian who got beat down that we talked about earlier because she dared to fight back? Many people claim she was the one who started throwing some of the first punches after Stonewall. It's not been verified, but it's entirely possible. She was feisty. She became known afterwards as the guardian of the lesbians, always protecting her community. She lived the rest of her life in New York City, where she remained active in the community, performing it as a drag king well into her late years. She passed away on May 24th, 2014, at the age of 93.
Craig Rodwell, a bookstore owner and early LGBTQIA plus activist who helped play a significant role organizing the protests and demonstrations following the Stonewall riots. He was also instrumental in the creation of the first Christopher Street Liberation Day March, which later evolved into the first LGBT Pride parades.
Speaking of Pride, Brenda Howard, who is known as the Mother of Pride, was a bisexual activist who also played a key role in organizing the first Christopher Street Liberation Day March in 1970, originally to mark the 1-year anniversary of the Stonewall riots. She also co-founded the New York Area Bisexual Network and was a strong LGBTQIA advocate.
Bob Kohler was a gay rights activist who participated in the uprising and was heavily involved in the activism that followed. He co-founded the Gay Liberation Front and was known for his efforts to raise awareness of issues affecting LGBTQ youth and homeless individuals. It's not widely remembered, but the second night was more brutal for both sides. The mafia, not one to miss a payday, had the basic damage repaired and reopened that night. The police were determined to crack down on the rioters and show strength, but awareness that the community would stand together, even with violence, if necessary, was the egg that cracked and hatched. The gay rights movement was born in earnest because gay people just wanted to dance. No transgender, no gay rights movement. It's that simple. Those who speak against unity of the whole LGBTQIA plus community do so from a place of ignorance and put us all in peril. There are some surprising things I learned about the Stonewall riots. First of all, that the most active and successful activist groups that formed after it were not after integration or simple equality with white middle America.
They were they were radicals, true liberals who equally believed in ending racism, in ending sexism, in the true empowerment of women, and in the truth of gender, even in the belief that monogamy was inherently against nature. These greater ideals were chipped away to form a closer union with less radical liberal ideals, much to the disappointment of the founders of the cause. But in the end, they did get more awareness that people are born gay or trans or bi or non-binary, that these groups have rights.
And unfortunately, that awareness is being chipped away again. In 1950, 15 states still had laws that allowed LGBTQ people to be committed to sanitariums, where the horrific and extreme therapies were utilized to try and cure LGBTQIA people. How many people and lives and families were destroyed because of political posturing and moralism?
Finally, while I really hope that it never comes down to acts of violence once again, the words now spoken in anger to incite violence have brought us back to the brink of what I believe will be a massacre. And I'm very worried that, unfortunately, this is what it will take to rouse the conscience of our nation to once again do better and accept LGBTQIA plus people as real people. This won't be a fight between a small angry mob and a woefully overconfident New York City police force. There are hate groups primed and ready and stocked with weapons, ready to kill without restraint. Many people are so blinded by biased media talking points, they will cheer it on like Romans at the Colosseum gladiator games. Look at the hate speech and outright lies that are propagating the right-wing messaging and legislation. Once again, we are being labeled as mentally ill, a threat to women and children, something to be eradicated, and they will try.
But trans people, the LGBTQIA rainbow of sexuality and gender identity isn't going anywhere.
If anything, you're reminding us it's time to be stronger.
There is a quote accredited to anonymous queers from 1977, and I love it. It says, "The strong sisters told the brothers that there were two important things to remember about the coming revolutions. The first is that we will get our asses kicked. And the second is that we will win."
I never looked into Stonewall or the history of the LGBTQI plus movement before I hatched and before that rally. But when I did, I saw real heroes in very terrified, normal people. I see that's where we are as a community, and with my sisters and with our friends. But love will win. Before we close out, ladies, because we do have a lot of extra time, actually, I think I'm amazed at how quickly we got through all of those words. I would really like for us for a moment to talk about what Stonewall means to each of us. And Jaime, I think you're absolutely right. I think too many people make it the turning point, but it really wasn't. There were activities before, there was forward moment, but what it did was cauterize and show the community that we could be strong together. I'm really trying desperately to seek ways that we can bring community together with that kind of strength, without there needing to be deaths, without there needing to be that kind of violence. And any ideas on that? Any ways that we might be able to unify without that kind of struggle?
I'm going to say that, part of Stonewall's history is before that, it goes all the way back to Harvey Milk and him starting to stand up. And he was very, very well known for saying you have to put a face with it. You have to be willing to say, I'm here. You have to be visible. Nobody should take our rights away because they are our rights. But he was a huge, huge supporter of being visible and visibility. There is a great movie. I believe Sean Penn is in it. I'm so bad with names and even worse with actors' names.
That's right. That's right.
Okay, good. Woo, Sean Penn, I win. The Milk movie. And if you have not watched it, if anybody hasn't watched it and they just want to get that feeling, because I believe that when you watch that feeling in the pit of your stomach, you will understand what it means when I say I'm fighting every day so that hopefully my daughter can come back to Florida one day, because she left because she's afraid to be here.
Yeah, I agree. There was so much history that a lot of people point to Stonewall and they're like making it's this one moment, but there was so much leading up to it. And I mean, even when we were talking about Mattachine, I didn't know all that much, and so I actually wanted to look it up to make sure I was saying it right, and two, to find out what the society was. And when I looked into it, it actually started in 1950s out of California, and it was gay men who was like a secret underground society that they were trying to get, be able to just be gay and like not have this stigma attached to it. And when I looked up the actual word, it turns out it was taken from medieval times, which I thought was really interesting. And it was like unmarried men that would travel around and provide messages on social justice and things like that in like medieval times. That's where the name came from. Yeah, I had no idea. And so I think, even in my research, with Stonewall, there was just, I feel like there was so much that came before it that, these people gave up their lives, their livelihoods, their jobs. I mean, just for being who they are.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I told Vicki, I love that we're doing it on Stonewall. And I think Stonewall is so important because it was really like one of those galvanizing moments, right? But there are so many things that came before. But this particular moment and these riots, it shaped the way activists work now, because there is a power in unity and a power in spreading your message. And I think that is the true amazingness that came out of the horrific attacks at Stonewall. This activist kind of network that they saw, like, look, we can fight back. Are we gonna have to get hurt? Probably yes. Are we gonna have to put ourselves on the line? Are we gonna be, let's even put it like today's time, like modern times. Are we gonna get trolled? Am I gonna possibly lose my job? Like, yes, all of these things are
horrible things that they're trying to put pressure on. Yes,
exactly. But the fact that people still continuously put their lives on the line every single day for what they believe in is incredible. And I think that's what these people did then. And it's sad that we're in 2024 and we're looking at this going, why, my God, we're so far from this.
But there's adages that have been said 100 times. First off, things have to get worse before they get better. We've heard that a zillion times.
Yep.
And then also that history is doomed to repeat itself.
Unless you learn from it. And again, I think most of us did. And the Mattachine, Jaime, I wanted to lift them up. The New York Mattachine, I wanted to lift them up so badly because they were very bold at a time, being on television, being out, proclaiming that gay wasn't against morality, that it was natural, that but they compromised so much.
Yes, they
were
did.
Still trying to fit into that. Well, let's form an uneasy alliance with middle class America, and just to get our foot in the door. And I don't think that you can compromise with things that are truths. So again, when I saw an interview, and it was a horrific interview with this guy who first of all claimed he hadn't been practicing gay, he'd given it all up 4 months before the interview, and then saying that gay people would never want things like gay marriage or to be able to adopt children or any of these things. That was horrific.
Yeah.
The other thing, that quote that you sent me, Jaime, and that quote, I've read it over and over and over again, and it is so deep and related to what we have. Marcia and Sylvia were already forming their radical groups and brought them together after Stonewall, but that the strong sisters told the brothers there are two important things to remember, right? And the one was, it's going to be a shit show. It's going to get bad.
Yeah.
But the other is that we will win. They really were these women who so often get
relegated to the back because even when it was this original gay pride, it was white men. It was white gay men. They didn't want
these
to
pictures.
include the trans women.
Fucking look at these pictures. This is
the cis white men tend to be a lot of the problem around here. Not for nothing.
Gays against groomers. Yeah.
I love the gays against groomers. I want to strangle them.
I think there's an element to.
I don't want to strangle them. I would like to strangle their voices of hatred.
I think there is still very much, and I think there was at the time too, this misogyny that was very much ingrained. You're still dealing at this time. You're dealing with segregation in the South, and so many other issues. And even like if you want to kick it to women's suffrage, I mean, you had amazing women fighting, but didn't want to upset the higher ups because they were like, oh shit, we don't want to upset the Southern women, so we got to have the Black women marching at the back. And then you have Ida B. Wells, who's like, fuck you, I am marching with my state in this fucking parade. And so like you have so many, dare I say it, we have to say it, intersectionality, people. It matters. It matters.
Yeah, and I wanted to bring that up as well, because in all of the interviews that I read and I watched, that was one of the huge things. The closeted gay community would go and march for equal rights. Martin Luther King had been killed. There was
That's right, because he was assassinated in 1968. So
there was an outrage for women's rights. There was outrage for racial equality. There was outrage for the war in Vietnam. That was,
Yep.
The difference is a little bit, though. What I'm going to say is back then, still, it was wrong to be outwardly hateful, right? If you were being so outwardly hateful and attacking people, they'd be like, come on, like publicly. Of course they were doing it.
I disagree with you. I've looked at hours of testimony of people when they were throwing things at the Black students and tried to get into the college. I mean, they weren't hiding their hate. They were calling you a faggot. They were calling you the N-word. They were vile. And so
I guess it's just social media wasn't there to make it seem as immense, I guess. Maybe that's where I'm thinking that it just didn't seem as out there, because
I think we went to a place where it got quiet, like we kind of quieted down in the 80s and 90s, and people still had those same thoughts, but they said them behind closed doors. And then you had the rise of Trumpism and all of that stuff. And then all of a sudden people are like all of a sudden walking out going, hey, I can say that in public now. I can say I hate these people. And these people can go back to their country. But I think they were saying that back then, for sure. I mean, they were saying it to marginalize people. They for sure were. I never saw that picture before.
Yeah. These are all marches and progress that has been made since. And again, to go back, it was a parade originally to commemorate the 1-year anniversary of Stonewall that became the foundation of the New York Pride, which is kind of the prototype for all of the pride marches and festivals.
And why Pride Month is held in June. It is because of Stonewall. Yeah.
Stonewall. Yeah.
You know, but something that all this has in common is, like Shelley said, the power is in visibility.
Mhm.
It is being visible and being willing to be out there and willing to talk about it and willing to show love. And, you know, I encourage all of the parents out there to be proud. Please, even if your child is not in the same state as you, please go to your Pride event this year and show support, show love. You don't have to be in the parade, but you can watch it and wave. People like that too.
And also too, visibility does matter, and representation matters, but also it's not everybody can be visible, and that's okay. And it doesn't mean you're any less of a parent or less of a queer person because you're not visible. Hey, I get it, and not everybody can be. But for those of you that can be, please be, because it really does matter.
Yeah, and I think that it's also important to point out that once again, organized crime was there to make a profit on people suffering in a large way. When I found out about the sex trucks that were really the only place, because two gay men or two great gay women or anything that was considered deviant would be reported by innkeepers at the motels immediately to the police, and almost always guaranteed an arrest. There was no safe harbor except in your own homes, and not even then often.
No, because the landlords would report them if a man went up to his apartment and another man came up. Like, yeah.
And also the vile outing. I mean, there's a reason we call it outing. It was because once they were arrested, those names were published in every single New York City newspaper, with the exception of the Village Voice, and they were there. They were there. They grabbed the press passes and they were there, and they got barricaded inside of Stonewall with the cops when they ran in and locked themselves back inside. And yet, where is the pictures? Where was the true accounts? Where was the journalism? And realistically, I think it really kind of pointed out that we needed better journalism, and we still do.
Mm-hmm.
We still need people that are willing to tell our story with integrity, but can make it impactful and get it out there. And I haven't seen that yet.
It's hard if you just look at what happened on January 6th. If you just want to go back then and watch as those people that were not a tourist at the Capitol were attacking savagely not only the Capitol building, but also reporters and journalists there. They were literally attacking them and damaging their equipment and everything for them being there and telling the truth and showing it. I mean, that's just what's gotten so crazy.
Yeah. And yet, there's footage of them from foreign press that dared to go in with them, even though they had the most to lose, really.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Thank God they had that I thank God for that man. Sorry. Love you. Screaming
all of the hateful things, everything that they were going to do to our elected officials. You know what? This incitement cannot stand. This was lies upon lies upon lies upon bullshit upon more lies upon conjecture.
God, it sounds so familiar to what's going on right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, and yet these people are still clinging to this. Not one shred of credible evidence ever produced. No votes.
Multiple arrests and convictions. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I encourage anybody who hasn't been to visit if you are in New York City. It is actually a really great place to go and to grab lunch and to visit, especially in the summer. There's a beautiful park that's right across from Stonewall. We were there like 2 or 3 summers ago, and they have all the flags representing all of the communities, and they're up all the time. And it's this beautiful, very peaceful and tranquil little park. It's a tiny little park right across. Like, I mean, it's real tiny. But yeah, I when we were in New York quite a bit, and we had to bring Dempsey there. And I just think, for me, when I snapped that picture and she was wearing the trans flag as a cape, and there was all the flags behind her, it was so awesome. And it's definitely a place to see and to experience and to feel the power of a movement and the power of people who were there and spontaneously called to action. They were fucking fed up. Like, they were tired, and they didn't want to do this anymore. Like, this, I'm just trying to live my life. That's it, So, yeah.
And I do want to say, we have people in Tallahassee right now who are standing up. They're there. They're going against some horrible, stupid, like, flag bills and all
Mhm.
sorts of other ridiculousness that our government seems to be wasting time on. That our government is more concerned about, in Florida, about what flag we're flying, right?
Mhm.
Than if the homelessness or what
the
number are we
homelessness.
scoring in education at this point?
I think we're like the third bottom.
Negative?
And
Negative?
talking about homelessness, we have such an issue, especially here, like where I am, with transient people and people that are having food insecurity and homeless people. And now DeSantis, I saw, is pushing this tent thing. Like, no tents are allowed. Like, he's going to make it like
don't sleep on the streets.
It's like, where do you want these people to go? You can't. Where are you going to put them? Like, they're people. Like, that's the thing. They're people. And so it's like, you can't just keep pushing them. I don't know.
And
me.
what I don't understand
I'm like
is
confused
those
on the thing.
people are still his constituents. Those are
Yeah.
still people that he took an oath to take care of. And to
Unless, of course,
support.
they're felons, because we voted for them to have their rights to vote back, but they,
And
of
they
course,
never
won't
got
give
them.
them back.
Well, that's because we have a governor that's in place that would not be helpful to him. So therefore, why listen to the voice of the people? Because
True.
now he just
True that.
closes the door and is doing shit behind doors instead of in front of it, how it's supposed to be done anyway.
But he saved the manatees. It wasn't the overly mild winter. It was the fact that he mentally willed the manatees to be safer.
He also brought back high-heeled boots in fashion.
Yes.
He did. I mean, I got to tell you,
God.
I've been thinking about getting a pair of those white ones. Him and the green M&M make it look really good.
These boots are made for walking.
I thought about it, but I like showing my toenails too much. No, I feel very honored that the government in Tallahassee and several governments like in Utah and Ohio are so worried about what's between my legs. They're more worried about what's between my legs than I ever have been worried about what's between my legs.
Yeah.
It really does show, honestly, what they think with.
Yeah.
And it's not what's between their ears,
they've never
what's
hit
between
that.
their legs.
Yeah, they've never hit that.
I've said this before and I'll say it again. If you're taking the average of how often people typically have sex, and if we're just saying it's once a week, right? And that's only 52 times a year. So if you're worried about what people are doing for, say, 52 hours out of an entire year, and that's what you're basing if they should live or die on, when they're not hurting anybody, it's consensual relationships.
And
I
that's
just don't
the sexuality
understand.
part. Talking about the gender identity, that doesn't even have to do with sex at
Exactly.
all. That's
Exactly.
who the hell you live as a person.
Exactly.
So my existence, Dempsey's existence, Vicky's existence, that's somehow offending them.
Yeah.
Because it's other. It's other than what they think is normal. And so, yeah, there's that too.
Well, and the parents' rights groups, those are the ones that are just killing me because once again, I know we've talked about it before, but they want to make the decisions for me too. They seem to forget that I'm a parent and I should have my rights to be able to go listen to the doctors, go and talk to people who went to medical school, who got educated and understand so much more than I do. And
it should be renamed
Laura.
Some Parents' Rights, because that's what it is. It's some parents' rights. It's not all parents. It's not me. It's not you. It's not.
And the don't tread on me is very, very, very appropriate because it's me.
Yeah, it's selfish. It's selfishness. It's selfishness, and it's part of the reason why they also dismiss trans people, especially, is because they claim, well, it doesn't have anything to do with me. I don't know anyone that's trans, and so it doesn't have to do with me. So what do I care? Well, then stop letting these politicians focus on that.
Or worse, they simply choose, despite overwhelming evidence and years and years and years of clinical psychiatry, psychology analysis, put the actual scientific proof aside, years and years and years of therapy, they put all that aside and said, I just simply don't believe your truth is your truth.
Well, there's also some people that believe the earth is flat. So
yes.
Okay, well, listen, you're once again talking about we're talking about the party. Hold on. And I'm going to be very honest about it. Okay. I'll go back to women's rights again. Okay. So the poor 10-year-old girl that got pregnant by rape in Ohio, we had elected officials saying that they didn't believe it was rape, that a 10-year-old had asked for it. And then when they arrested the man and he's like, oh yeah, I raped her twice.
Is that like the Moms for Liberty husband that here in Florida that raped the partner because his wife couldn't go? By the way, her OnlyFans got leaked, and that's definitely something they should put in the library to for kids to see.
Oh well, Escambia County banned the dictionary.
Yeah, well, you can't keep learning words.
My good Lord.
They might be able to communicate.
Dictionary
because they're really going to think I'm indoctrinating kids now when I'm quoting Webster's. Shit.
Damn, girl. You're on point.
Shit.
I mean, for the love of God, the panhandle of Florida just banned the fucking dictionary.
Yeah, yep. I think a sinkhole should open up, and the politicians that are making these laws should just suck them in. Like The Gate. Remember the movie The Gate, when the hole just opens up? But just the politicians that vote for this shit. Like
sometimes I feel I wish I could be the fire starter girl.
Oh, with your hair? Yeah, I love that. Actually, I think Vicki's got it better because she's got the fire hair.
Yeah, she does have the flame hair.
With the hair, with the wind blow it, like, whoo, oh yeah. For me, it would be like.
It's so easy to get caught up in the rage and the hate, and I have to battle. I'm not lying. I have to battle it off every day, because that's not who I want to be. That's not who I am. My brain, where it's at, calmer, happier, with people that I truly love. Wanting to exist and enjoy what time I have left. I mean, it's sad that Sylvia Rivera died at 50. I've already passed that threshold.
And she died in a homeless camp. She didn't even have a home.
Yeah. And all the while she was still advocating for, and still an activist, and still making appearances, and nobody knew she was homeless. These people that I have nothing but respect for, that did light our path, because again, people can't comprehend. Gay was not discussed except in negative terms. There's a 60 Minutes episode with Mike Wallace, the most pompous white asshole in existence, talking about the evils of homosexuality, and how and there was a young lawyer who had to be disguised like he was hiding from the fucking mafia behind a rubber tree plant in the dark, to even go on and talk about these urges that none of us could get rid of, if we tried. I can't change who I am.
No.
I can't change what I am. I will not even try to put myself in that closet again.
And you never should have to.
And no one else should either. No one should.
I'm so upset about how many of my loved ones I've had to hear say that they hate themselves because they're trans. I mean, I've had so many people say that, and it's something they hate about themselves, and that's something that makes you special. And I don't understand why as a community we don't celebrate what makes us special and what makes us unique. I mean,
I agree with you. And the last thing I'm going to add, because you said, why don't we celebrate it? We should. And there are some communities that do celebrate it. The Two-Spirit community, there's giant amounts of, well, not giant, they're not big communities, but they celebrated, they revered transgender people because they were like almost godlike. These are people who are so in tune to who they are that they are beyond the rest of us lay people. So I wish that we could get to that, and to, instead of just bringing everybody down and we should be celebrating what makes us different. We're all different.
I was in an interview for a LGBTQ related position, not for work but as a volunteer, but I went through the last year of my life. I was overwhelmed at the amount of change for the better that I have experienced as a transgender woman in my transition. How extremely lucky I have been to have affirming, loving, caring, kind, patient people around me, like Lisa, my wife, like both of you. Nobody will ever tell me that you're not my sisters, because you never saw me or have treated me as anything different. And that past life that was so lonely and sad and painful is gone, because I had support from where I worked, the people I was working with, the community here in Orlando that is an amazingly loving and supporting LGBTQIA plus community, and most of all from my family.
I believe there actually was a new statistic that came out today, and dang, I'm trying to find it real quick.
Oh no, it was 90%, right? 90% of us who transition are fucking happier.
Right?
Happier.
That's awesome.
Transition.
It was something great.
90%.
Only
That's incredible.
2% plus a very weak 1% really are having a negative experience.
But it's probably societal. It's family. They don't have any support.
You know what? And I'm very happy, because I've wondered this often. And I had the opportunity to speak with a beautiful transgender woman the other evening. And she had actually shared that she had actually detransitioned at one point. And I asked her, I said, hey, I really am interested to know, when you detransitioned, were you in a supportive environment? Were you in a safe environment? And she looked at me and said, I'm so glad you asked me that question. No, I was not.
Yeah. I was very fortunate. My therapist, and the reason I went with her and worked with her for so many years until she passed, she had experience with both. She was not an advocate for either. She was an advocate for whatever was right for the individual.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that I found out from her son afterwards, she only had two, and that was remarkable that she even had two people that detransitioned. One of them has already come back and retransitioned. The other one killed themselves. So it's like you said, it's a shame. I cannot call myself anything but blessed for my transition experience. As crazy as it was, with the people that I lost, with the tensions that were high sometimes in my household, the negativity of coming out in this time where it will be a fight for existence.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have it any other way, and I definitely would not have made it through without both of you.
I am so
We love you.
grateful that I have the opportunity to get to know you
Yeah.
and let you enrich my life so much. Like, you don't understand. I'm the one that's blessed.
No.
Yeah. Same.
Mhm.
We love you.
Love you
We
too.
love you. We love you.
Love
Look, we made it to 1 hour .01.
Yeah.
Holy
So
crap.
so I mean, I hate to ask this question, but it really is true. It's going to happen again. So which, and I wonder
We have
who.
a special guest saying
Hi,
hi.
Dempsey.
Hi, beautiful.
We were talking about Stonewall. So I need to ask, because it looks like it's coming that way again, and I truly wonder who will be the next one to raise a brick and stand up for what's right.
I don't have a real brick, but I got a Kleenex brick.
That works.
It
You have
works.
bricks behind you.
Right? Yeah, I have a whole brick wall behind me. There's my brick.
Ladies, it's been an honor. Thanks everyone who watched this very strange and different episode. This was a very important one for us. This was we wanted to tell the story in our own way, and I think we accomplished that. So next week we're going to be back with something much less challenging, with much fewer words, and probably a lot more fun. And until then, we'll see everybody next week. Love you
Love
all.
and light.
Love you.
Love and light.
Love you.
Bye.